Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great Friday so far and happy Pride Month or Pride season. We like to think that it extends beyond June. But just wanted to come on here today for another installment of our Ask the Expert series. But this time we have our resident expert, Clay, here to chat with us about Pride in general, but also some efforts that we've done here at Premier to make sure that we formalize our efforts. So I'll just kind of briefly introduce what we'll talk about today, and then I'll hand it over to Clay to give some background into his professional background and kind of why he's such a wealth of knowledge in this space. So just to kind of let you know what we're talking about today, we're going to cover everything employee resource group related. What is an employee resource group? How is the best way to get that off the ground? And kind of give you some insight into what we've been doing behind the scenes. And then also, that's a great opportunity to talk about our first ERG that we created, Queer at Premier, that Clay is the chair of and has constantly just kind of kept that drumbeat moving for us since we started it. So with that, Clay is actually on our recruiting side of the business. He is a recruiter and an account manager. So this whole Queer at Premier thing is definitely extracurricular that he takes so much time away from his busy job to help us with. So we're just so appreciative. But that's kind of the ins and outs of what we'll chat about. Clay, I'd love to hand it over to you to just give us a little background. You've had an incredible background with your career in general, but love to hear a little bit more about your background when it comes to your involvement with some leading organizations out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Caitlin. Super excited to share what we've learned about about ERGs and through our ERG, Queer at Premier. But a little about me, I started my career actually in marketing and public relations, doing digital social media. I had a pretty, I think Sheryl Sandberg said, treat your career like a jungle gym, not a ladder. I took that advice to heart. Started in PR and marketing, did some consulting, worked in sales and marketing, and made my way to recruiting. And in that time, over the course of that period, I got involved with the Human Rights Campaign as a volunteer, which is the nation's largest LGBTQ civil rights organization. And I've been volunteering with them for almost 4 years, doing activism and advocacy in the LGBTQ community. And I was so excited when I came to Premier and I found a work home that said, bring all of you to work. And we want all of your gifts. We want to equip you and support you in doing that. And through those conversations, that's how Queer at Premier came about.
Yeah, I remember even because I actually had just joined our marketing team when we kind of started these initiatives. And I remember the conversation that you had with our director of marketing was very casual. It was after one of our Halloween parties, if I'm correct.
It was off-site for sure, yeah.
Yeah, but we really took it and we're like, yes, we love this idea. Let's run with it. And one thing too that I think was so important of your background that kind of helped us in this journey is that you've had so much exposure to different companies, different populations of people, different ways that different nonprofits are kind of tackling these same issues. So when you came to us, I remember with the idea of starting an ERG, it was kind of like, what is an ERG? We had to inform our people at Premier what it even was. So why don't we kind of start there and then we'll kind of dive into what we ended up doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great starting point. So an ERG stands for Employee Resource Group. And if you're at a very large organization, chances are you already have an ERG in place. So companies like Square, Twitter, Google, Apple, all of the big companies and startups, some of whom we work with, they all have ERGs for different affinity groups. So you might have a Black employee ERG, you might have women ERG, Queer at Premier is an LGBTQ ERG. So any number of organizations where, there are any organizations of employees who might identify around a certain thing can get together. And what it means to exist as is a couple different things. So to management, it is the best resource, the best insight to know how your employees are feeling, especially if you're involved, as one should be, in DEIB work, creating an inclusive environment in the workplace. This is an amazing, amazing way to get people who are passionate and active involved in those efforts. Also to get an ear to the ground of how are things really going. So if you're an employee, though, it's just a great opportunity to get together with your peers, people who are like you in your organization, and really share resources, learn about your areas of interest, and, most of all, see people like you within your organization and know that it's somewhere that you belong.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. But an ERG serves many, many purposes.
Yeah, no, there's so much. And I feel like what I have really felt beneficial from the marketing standpoint, having an ERG, we still are trying to build out more. Queer Premier is still kind of our lone soldier, but we're working on it. But with that, having a subject matter expert within the company who can speak to issues, so you're not that talking point for everybody. You can kind of go to the people who have skin in the game and say, hey, let's collaborate together to start working on some initiatives, some content out there, where it's not only being dictated by one team, it's more of a collaborative effort. So that's one thing that I've really appreciated. I've also super appreciated how you brought other thought leaders from the space in to help us kind of shape what we do. I know that early on, I believe we had someone who had worked at Electronic Arts previously come in and chat with us. And it's just so funny because these things exist around you and you always know, but then it's like the light bulb goes on, oh, we could apply it here. So I remember he kind of chatted about the importance of formalizing ERGs and making sure that you have lines of succession and chairs and co-chairs and secretaries. So inevitably, if people are to leave the company, it's able to be handed over seamlessly, and there's not, a period where it kind of slips through the cracks and then has to get started again. So it's just consistent. So that's also been something very interesting to think about, the organizational side of it that gets applied to it, and how companies can make sure that there are ERGs and any initiatives that they're leaning into aren't just passing fads, that there's something that there is structure and policy surrounding, so that it is something that you can expect at Premier, other companies, for the foreseeable future. So that's been, I think, super awesome. And I guess, again, we are segueing very easily into our next talking points, but I'd love to kind of hear about what that journey looked like for Premier. I know I talked about kind of how we had to let our people know the basics and just define things before we got started. But what did that process look like after that? What's been, I guess, done over the past year that you feel you're really proud of?
Yeah, absolutely. I think speaking generally, you might think of the progression of ERG organization as starting with a group of people you might get together for coffee on just, during lunch or during a break. And then evolving into a more organized structure where you do have chairs, co-chairs, different positions. You have a formalized mission statement, and all of that for any organization that's looking to, start an ERG. That might be what that process looks like. For us, it was actually pretty similar. It started with, after an offsite event, we were sitting around just having a conversation, talking about, I think we were just talking about DEIB in general and what we could do, and just, spitballing around ideas. And I don't remember how it came up, but Queer at Premier, the name stuck. Also, it rhymes. Yeah. So maybe start with good branding. That's an important thing. Yeah. But the name came up, and it was just a couple of us who were chatting back and forth. And then it gotten, to the point of like, okay, hey, we have this idea. Went to a couple other people who might be interested. They were like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I would love to help with that. I'm like, okay, cool. Now we officially have a committee of about 4 or 5 people who are interested in organizing this effort. We developed it out a little bit more. We wrote a mission statement, a purpose statement. We formalize this all into a document to present to management and say, hey, here's this, thing we want to do. We want to officially organize this as an ERG. And well, what's an ERG? Okay, well, here's, what an ERG is. There's a couple of resources you can find online too that help with that conversation. To say, here's the benefit that it brings to an organization. Here's the benefit it brings to a workforce. And so that's what we did. And our leadership, thankfully, was like, oh my gosh, we love it. How can we support? And that's the best possible response you could get. And it went from there. We just started hosting meetings. We didn't really know what we were doing either. And all of a sudden we had like 20, 30 people on a call like, yeah, we are here as allies, or we identify as LGBTQ+. We want to get involved. And we're like, okay, we're going to come up with programming now. And that's when we started to invite other, outside speakers. We had, and I think that's also maybe another segue into a different topic, but that's one of the purposes that an ERG can serve is that education element. So for us, we're an LGBTQ ERG. What we wanted to do was make sure that being in the business of talent acquisition, we knew the best practices. How do you navigate a situation in which an environment might not be super friendly to an LGBTQ person? How do you navigate transition at work? For trans and non-binary individuals, how do you navigate those conversations with clients? How do you support candidates through that process? And what are the regulatory issues that come into play with that as well? So we wanted to make sure we had all of those things nailed down. So we were the best resource possible for LGBTQ plus candidates, and best resource for our clients possible too.
Yeah, totally. I think, and that's so much that any of our viewers, you'll always hear us say that we do have such a great internal culture here at Premier, but it's never lost on us that there is a broader ecosystem that exists in our contract workforce and just job seekers we work with and clients we work with, and tons of areas to advocate for them and also educate our clients on how they can advocate for contractors. Sometimes contractors, unfortunately, slip through the cracks. They might be on site at a company or working with a company, but they're, under the umbrella of a staffing agency like Premier. So how do you make sure that those people continuously feel supported? So one of the ways that we've done it is making sure that we've launched a candidate newsletter that goes out quarterly. We always include updates for Queer at Premier, any other DEIB initiatives that we're working on, but just always making sure that we're keeping in mind that while Premier is able to do these things internally, that does not mean that our clients necessarily have the same priorities or the same timeline that we do. So extending that layer of support to them is always really critical to us. So we loved it. And I love how you kind of touched on how with us, it was an organic process. We had people who knew what they were doing, and thank goodness that helped guide us, but we kind of just went into it and just, we're doing this. And that is very part of the course with Premier. We like to, do a lot of A/B testing and just see how it goes. But, it just shows that you don't need to have it all figured out in the beginning. You don't need to have every single thing nailed down. You just need to start somewhere with like-minded individuals and just see how you can add value to the world around you. So we've just been really appreciative of it, and I think it's helped shape our management's mindset to think about how more ways we can lean into this. Of course, with all this stuff, it does take extracurricular time, but how do we make sure that we're able to give our employees that time, and make sure that they also realize that contribution to the business is just as important as any revenue, generating business or anything like that. So, we've just really appreciated it. And since it's Pride Month, we just thought it was so important that you came. So on our end, we're doing a lot with, we love stickers. So we're trying to start doing stickers for our contract workforce, trying to get some swag. Thank you, Clay. Yes, you're the best with having our swag on hand. But leaning into that stuff, making sure that our community, feels the love. So that's some stuff that we're doing, very casual, of course. When we are able to all get in person again, we're excited to start having actual live events where who knows where that'll take us. But it's just been such an awesome journey partnering with you, and we just so appreciate you. So thank you, Clay. I guess one thing I'd love to close out with, do you have any advice to any person out there, any candidate, any job seeker, any person working at any company, how they can start these initiatives and kind of what, I guess, you would advise them to do if you could be who you were a year ago?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, number one, if you are a candidate, say you're evaluating a company, you're trying to figure out, is this a place for me? Make sure you're talking with your recruiter, your HR person, whoever your point of contact is, and ask those questions. Are there ERGs? Are there resources for people like me? Are there resources or groups to join? If not, and you're in an organization, you want to start that, well, reach out to some of the organizations around you. You can pretty typically find ERG leaders easily on LinkedIn. Find other companies who are in your same space. Find out who's running those ERGs. Send a message of outreach that's like, hey, here's where we're at. We want to do this. How do I even start? We're always happy to help, because overall, no matter if it's an LGBTQ ERG, it's a women's ERG, a Black or Latinx ERG, ultimately we're in this for the betterment of our community and societies at large. So we're always down to lend a hand. Say hey to me, shoot me a message. I'll be glad to talk to you.
If you have the, intersectionality, it all laps on top of each other. So definitely not siloed, but that's so helpful. Thank you so much, Clay. Super happy to have you here. If anyone wants to connect with Clay, if you're in that space of you don't know what to do next, highly encourage you to reach out to him on LinkedIn. If he can't provide you the answer, we'll point you in the right direction. So you definitely are in good hands with him. But yeah, I think my closing point that I'd love to stick on is just feel empowered to do it. And as Clay mentioned, if you are in interview stages and this is something important that you're looking for in your next position, make sure that you add that to the end of your, when the floor is handed over to you, have that be one of your questions. What does support look like for someone like me in the company? And are there opportunities to lean into that if, that's something that I'd want to do? So that's all from me, but thank you so much, Clay. Love having you here, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Bye.
Bye.